So I talk a lot about your emotional guidance, and I talk a lot about feeling itself, rather than anticipating what a feeling is going to be like and averting from feeling itself, just staying with feeling itself. So, an analogy for what this is like sometimes, or it's like you're a dog that has one of those electric fence collars on, and so you learn not to cross the fence. So you don't even bother to cross the fence anymore. So you feel confined. But the batteries have died in the collar. The fence is gone. The fence has no power over you. But you still believe in your memory, you're feeling this association of pain with crossing this boundary. So, what it's a false memory that this feeling, this, stubbing my toe, this stomach ache, this, feeling of rejection, this feeling of jealousy, this, making an apology, anything that we're avoiding, we think we're going to get zapped if we cross that line, if we do that, if we cross that comfort zone. What we realize is that having a comfort zone is not comfortable at all, and that the only power to the zap when we cross that line is our belief that there is a zap. And this is what Wim Hof in his techniques kind of shows people. When you breathe and you enter cold water, it isn't, the zap isn't there anymore. All there is this pure aliveness. And when we come back to ourselves, when we come back to awareness itself, it feels so wonderful that sometimes we get it mixed up with coming from certain things. And it's kind of hilarious to go through and think of what some of those things are. So I used to have a bunch of really dull kitchen knives, and so I bought a sharp knife, and today I cut open a watermelon with it. And I love this knife because it cuts through the watermelon like amazingly well. But at the same time, I hate washing the knife because I know it's so damn sharp that any like move I make is really gonna cut me. Whereas the knives that I used to have were not that sharp. So I'm very careful and very aware. And as I was washing this knife, I was like, oh, it makes sense why people like handling weapons and swords and stuff. Because you have to be utterly present. One, you have to know exactly where your hands are. And skiing down a hill or doing extreme sports, you have to be utterly present. It like totally washes away the fear. The fear clouds. It clouds, and you just like have to be in the vortex in that moment. And so many of the I use that term from Abraham Hicks, and I have yet to find one that describes that better. Being in the vortex means both being like in a flow state, or like feeling that spark, feeling that inspiration, and at the same time being present and being aware. And I just love how it kind of marries those two things, because I think initially we think that meditation or awareness is boring somehow, or nothing happens, and nothing does happen, yet that sort of like stillness motion duality doesn't really exist. So you end up getting a lot of insights about why we love the things we love. For example, I love running because my thoughts slow down. I'm utterly aware of the surroundings. I love nature because nature isn't something that there's a lot to think about. It's like this ancient intelligence, its creation, its form, its beauty, but it's like this ancient intelligence that just sort of like came about and manifested without planning or striving. And so there's very little appearance or activation of like thought when you enjoy nature. And it also seems to have a way of bringing us back to ourselves. And meditation is something that I think that a lot of our fears try to avoid. Like we're afraid of death, we're afraid of disability, we're afraid of not having the ability to move or being stuck. Fears like that totally gloss over the fact that meditation without discordant thought activity is the greatest bliss that one could feel. And so you find that a lot of things we attribute with being the cause of joy, or things we attribute with the cause of being suffering, being sick, for instance, if we're ill, we have to rest. We have to sort of come back to ourselves. We've lost the habitual distractions, the habitual way of living. And what you realize is that there's nothing to long for and nothing to fear anymore. And when something disturbs us, it's almost a welcome thing, because the more disturbing something is, the more it's almost the desire to come home is so great. I was going to say it's like we're forced to come back to what we are. We're forced to the present moment, but the desire is so great. I was flipping through a Thich Nhat Hanh book, the book Savor. I found it in the free book box, and I read like one story that the Buddha told, and it's quite a shocking one, just to warn you. But it's two parents that were traveling, and I forget exactly what the location was or anything. And they underestimated how far they had to travel. They're traveling with their 3-year-old son, and they end up with the choice of like not being able to, all of them dying or having to eat their son. So they eat their son, and the Buddha used this as like a analogy, and in the book they were using it for like mindful eating. But you would not be able to do something so shocking or horrific without cutting yourself off completely from the attachment or what it meant, and also totally merging into the directness of it. And this is sort of where liberation occurs, where we see that there is no horror anymore within anything, that there's no potential for horror anymore. And this is not aversion or cutting ourselves off, but we see the utter love and acceptance and the directness that is prior to all tragedy, all loss, because life is utterly beyond life and death. And it's like the what we are in our wholeness it splits itself and it experiences this splitting so that it seemingly can progress or seemingly can mend or heal or come together. And this is the greatest experience of all. And yet it's like you won $1 million in the lottery. And that's your perpetual wealth. That's what you truly are. And yet when we forget, it's like we have this sort of entitlement to that money, this sense of entitlement. And so we buy a really nice car and somebody is jealous and somebody keys the car and we're indignant. In that moment, the joy and the worthiness and the good fortune of having won the lottery is totally disappeared. In our entitlement, we've forgotten it. And in our entitlement, we've forgotten our utter wealth, our true entitlement. And this is the very same thing as identifying with the body or identifying with separation. We split ourselves off, not realizing the wealth in that experience, in the same way that the lottery winner feels when he's keyed his car. And yet, we never really have. We can always come back to that. We can always realize how completely worthy we truly are. So remember, the batteries in that color are dead. The only zap is not externally imposed or asserted upon you, but is the anticipation of that zap. It's a thought saying, I can't go here, I can't do this because it will hurt, when those fears are what's blocking what we want most. I used to be afraid of speaking to people and going places, and that often still comes up. And very often when I do those things, not in a way of like pushing through or forcing myself to go through suffering, but when I examine it, when I'm aware of it, and when I focus on what I want rather than letting all of what I don't want or am afraid to have happen come into my awareness, it feels like your electric fence is gone, like your whole world completely opens up. And what we find is that loving others and loving ourselves and loving just loving, that is the experience of not having those boundaries anymore. And so often we think that we have to be a certain way to be liked by people, or we're, rather than really appreciating them or really being present with them, or thinking about what we shouldn't have said or what we may have said that could have offended them, or thinking about what they must be thinking about us. And so often in these conversations, we're doing that preemptive zapping, that we're trying to like toe the line, trying to be someone that we won't be ashamed of later. But when there is no shame later, you can fully love and fully be the loving, uninhibited, fearless, and yet deeply sensitive, intuitive companion or friend that we most want to be and want to have ourselves. And that boundary is no longer there either. So I just got stung really badly. I guess that's every like wasp or whatever it was, hornet sting is badly. But it reminded me of two things. One is the verse in the Bible somewhere "O death, where is thy sting?" And like Christianity is about transcending the fear of death. There is no death anymore. Our faith is in eternal salvation. And then it later on is realized to be that eternal salvation is now. It's not found in the future. It's not found within the realm of thought. It's not found within the realm of belief, but that we are washed free now. And there's no sting to death anymore. There's no sting to anything anymore. I don't feel my legs stinging at all anymore, coincidentally. But I wanted to talk about this because a lot of people have a problem with the law of attraction, which I talk about a lot. And I was just reading something today about some other teacher was saying how nobody should be made to feel like it was their fault or they attracted it in their experience. And I'm not thinking, oh, I did something bad, I did something wrong, I was thinking something and that's why I was stung. This is alchemy, this is transmutation to me. It's like, okay, I was stung, boom, awareness, and then, like, what am I going to make out of it? Why did this occur for me, rather than immediately judging it to be something bad? So to me, law of attraction is all about the openness to welcome whatever comes to us and to look back with the lens of which we're viewing it, and to not view it as a lens so narrowly as the person it happened to, but to see the symbolism, to see the message, to see the gift, to see the possibility for alchemy and transmutation in it. And the law of attraction, just like I talk about entitlement, neither that entitlement can mean suffering. We're entitled to something and it's not there. Or our entitlement as knowing our worth, knowing our completely invulnerable power, and yet also knowing that to be complete sensitivity, feeling, and complete vulnerability itself. And would you want to have it any other way? No. But everything that we're attracting is not to get something greater for us in some point in time, but to unveil what we really are. And when we interpret this as suffering, or when we try to avoid it, we don't see the gift in what it is. And it's so crazy to look at the world, and having been taught that aging is unattractive or aging is bad or whatever, but to see it as such a beautiful transformation, and to see that life just seems. Now, this is the illusion caused by this beautiful illusion of time, I guess, to be only getting better and better. And it's only thought that can say, yesterday was better than today. And all that serves to do is to point to what we want to do differently tomorrow. And it's only when you realize that you are utterly eternal and utterly timeless and utterly free that you really learn how to properly navigate time.